Welcome back to the Men's Talk Show. This is Daron. I'm going to be hosting the show today by myself. Chris and Wayne could not be here, unfortunately, but that's okay. We're going to be talking about drug addiction and alcoholism, and specifically the book that I read by Derrick Moore, Seven Steps from Addiction to Sobriety, and how he overcame it. But before I get into the actual seven steps of the book, I'm just going to talk a little bit about a little bit of thoughts about what I thought about the actual book and, kind of introduce the author himself. He's not, unfortunately, he could not be here with us today, but that's okay. The show must go on. So basically, I like the cover of the book. It kind of let me know who the person is, who I'm reading about. I like the bold letters, Seven Steps from Addiction to Sobriety. It kind of lets me know exactly what I'm going to be reading before I even actually read it. It was a very easy read. You can easily read this book within a week, tops, if you wasn't that busy. It took me probably about a month just because I was a little bit busy to read, but other than that, it was a really pretty easy, good book to read. Um, it was very organized. I like that the seven steps correlated with the seven chapters of the book. So it was, what each step you was gonna get throughout the book, according to the actual book type, the book chapters. Um, Basically, I also like that he talked, with the audience instead of to the audience. It was very, the seven steps was very relatable and understandable. And I think the seven steps could easily be applicable to anything in life, that you might want to try to solve or overcome. And it may not even have to do with drug addiction. So let's get into who is Derrick Moore. Basically, Derrick Moore, he grew up in East Anchorage, Alaska. He was raised by a single mother. Um, he was not very religious at the time, so he didn't really grow up in the church. He basically was indirectly involved in a bank robbery. One of his friends probably had set up, but he didn't actually commit the crime himself, but he was directly involved in that, which led him to actually, go to prison because of that and became a felon. And basically, his life kind of like spiraled out of control, and he started to become addicted to crack, cocaine, heroin, ecstasy, meth, and he was an alcoholic. But he decided to turn his life around by these seven steps that he lists in the book to pretty much overcome his life of a drug addiction and alcoholism. So, what are the seven steps? Let's actually get into that. So, the first step that he actually mentions in the book is any positive step in the right direction. And he mentions that he meditates and he prays. He wasn't too religious before he got into jail, but then I guess, he had an epiphany that, he had to believe in a higher being if he was going to get through what he was going to get through. So he started to become more religious in that aspect. So he did believe in some type of spirituality in order to get him through the things he wanted to get through. But going back to the first step, any step in the right direction, that's the first step he lists for his book. So that means that so he meditates and he prays and pretty much anything that he can think to do to move forward from that drug addiction, as he mentions. And then the second step that he mentions pretty much is open your mind to a power outside of yourself. So you really, in that predicament of, his drug addiction, he had to really believe in something that was greater than himself, whatever spirituality. And I really like that he didn't really double down on believing in God at a time like that. Even though that was his personal choice, I like that he, kind of left the interpretation to believe in whatever spirituality that you wanted to believe in. That was very important that he didn't, say you need to do this. And that's also another thing that I liked it about the book was that these steps, you don't have to follow these steps specifically to overcome drug addiction, but you can if you want to try to overcome it. But it's other steps that you can probably take to overcome a drug addiction. So that was his second step, and then his third step pretty much was having to do with having to follow core value list practice. So whatever characteristics that you currently have, that you don't really like about yourself, you can work on a plan to actually start to implement and change that. So if you know you have a drug addiction, you know, they always say the first step to recovery is admitting you have a problem. But he didn't mention that as a first step. But the third step basically is, working on a plan to kind of better yourself. So if you want to become more disciplined and stay away from drugs, don't involve other people around you, or don't, you know, um, you know, understand that it's really hard and difficult process to, be not be around from your so anyway, yeah. So listening those core value beliefs. The step four is start learning again. And that's going to pretty much entail whatever you want to learn about, you need to take a plan and action to do it. So if you want to train your mind to not think about drugs, then you need to work on a plan to actually implement that if you want to. And then step five is focus on the body and the mind. So, they know, that your body and your mind is connected in one. So basically, you want to make sure that you're working out and, eating right and, staying away from things that may not be the best, good for your mind and your body. So he lists that as step five. And then step six, do more. So if you don't like where you are currently in your life, you can try to figure out a plan to start doing more in your life and take small steps. And this is kind of like similar to step one. It's up to you to figure out what direction you want to go in your life. And then you need to implement a plan to do that. And he kind of lists his own, things that he did in the book, as you can read more about that in his book. And then step seven, create a daily routine. So in order to progress with change, you have to be able to stick with consistent goals in order to be able to change your lifestyle. So I know it might be hard to, just kind of like follow these seven steps because they might have been oversimplified, but, you know, really you don't have to follow these seven steps. You can, implement something else that's going to probably help you, but these are the seven steps that he claims that helped him overcome his drug addiction. So what what are some questions that I kind of still have from reading the book? Um, I wanted to kind of ask him, how is your body able to cope with meth, cocaine, heroin, ecstasy, and alcoholism all at the same time? That's what was kind of, if he was on the show today, I would kind of ask him, how were you able to cope with all of those drugs all together like that? Because you would think that, meth alone is very powerful. You would think that one drug alone would kill you. But to be battling with meth, ecstasy, cocaine, and heroin all at the same time, and then plus on top of that, you take in alcohol too. So you realize that's really bad. All of that's going to be bad for the body. but I just wanted to kind of know how he was able to, endure all of that. And another question I really had, um, pretty much, do you think that the seven steps were oversimplified in any way? And I kind of simplified them down, but he even simplifies them down in a way, and he even mentions that these are not the you know steps that you need to really take to implement to change your life, but these are the more of the steps that he implemented to change his life. So if you want to follow these steps, you can follow them, but if you had other ideas or ways that you think you can move forward in your a drug addiction or alcoholism, then you can follow those as well. So I felt like he kind of did oversimplify it in a way. So that was one of the other questions that I want to kind of ask him. And another question I want to ask him was, do you think it was really worth it indirectly robbing a bank um and to only take $6 and to end up being a felon for the next couple of years of your life? Do you really think that was worth it? That would be another question. But that I would ask him if he was, present with us today. So now I'm gonna actually try to get into some of the six steps that you know, I thought personally that I came up with that could actually help somebody that, might be going with drug addiction. So I kind of mentioned back earlier in our conversation, in step one a little bit, admitting you have a problem. He didn't say this as his first step, but this would be my first step to actually, overcoming it, drug addiction. Because a lot of times when people, this might be an oversimplification again, but that's okay. A lot of times when people have a drug problem, they don't want to never admit that they have it. They just keep spiraling out of control, and they would do whatever it takes to get drugs in their system. They don't care. They don't care who they step on, step over. It doesn't matter. You know, I had a cousin that was, doing crack. So I'm very familiar with how he manipulated people, how he, used people to his advantage. He would say anything and everything just to get his next fix. So I'm very familiar about like the different tactics that they could use to, get those drugs. So, admitting that you have a problem is really of the big first steps to overcoming drug addiction or alcoholism. Because if you don't admit that you have a problem and want to set up to change, no one can force you to overcome your addiction. No one can force you to say, hey, I want to stop whatever drug that I'm taking. No one can admit that. That's on you to admit you have a problem. So that would be my first step. And then my step two was to get help with your problem. Now, he did mention in his book that, he didn't go to rehab to, get clean. He followed those 7 steps that we mentioned earlier to overcome his addiction. Now he's sober. But I would say, in case a lot of people was not strong to overcome their addiction, so you need to get your help. That means you need to go to rehab and AA meetings. And then also another thing I wanted to kind of mention is, why didn't he go to, rehab to help him with his addiction? That I think that probably would have been real powerful for him, but you know, each is to own, and people do things how they want to do it. But rehab is probably the best recovery method to getting clean, in my opinion. But if you are struggling with drug addiction, I would say my second step is to get help. So go to rehab, go to alcohol anonymous meetings to, talk to people and let them know what's going on. And no one's there to really judge you, because they're all battling with some type of, addiction themselves. So no one can sit up there in that room and say, Ooh, you here because of that. We all got a problem if we're in that room, right? So get help. Don't be ashamed. Don't be afraid to ask for help. There's nothing wrong with that, you know. And then seek out a counselor for additional support. So you want to always make sure that, you're, following up with your counselor appointments and stuff like that because they can help you. It is drug counselors out here that some are really pretty good and they can help you with some of the kind of thought that you might be having, around to becoming sober and hopefully getting off of drugs. And I'd say my step four was to confide in friends and family. And I know if you're in the, midst of, drug addiction, I know that it can be really hard to, talk to your friends and family about that because you might be thinking that they're gonna judge you and whatever thoughts you might be having with that. But if they're really your close friends and your family, they wouldn't judge you. They would be there to support you and, hold you down and be more accountable for the things you say you're not going to do to to becoming clean. So don't forget that element. Friends and family can help you if you're willing to let them in there. While they may not be the sole person that can help you, but they are there as a support too if you have people that's close to you and that love you and want to see you and want to see you do better and want to see you do better. And then also believe in yourself. Believe that change is possible. So going back to step two in his book, which I really like, is, he talked about a little bit about spirituality and how he, you know, didn't used to believe in God, but now he believed in God. And that kind of opened up his doors to see that that change is possible. So I would believe in myself too and say that I got this, even though it's hard to believe in yourself in the midst of the drug addiction that you got going on and the alcoholism. But don't give up on yourself because you deserve to live. Because the worst case scenario is you dying because of you own that stuff. You can die. Drug addiction is really real in this life. You know, my cousin, I'm gonna tell you a quick story here. Basically, the cops came down to my auntie's house and they bust through the door and they were trying to find him because, he was doing drugs. He knew he was guilty. And he hid right up under my bunk bed. I was like, what is going on? And they came right in my house. They stood him. They told him to get up from under the bunk bed, put the handcuffs on, put the handcuffs on him, and arrested him. I was just so disoriented, and I didn't know what was going on because I was like halfway asleep when they came busting in, and he decided to hide right under the bunk bed that I was sleeping on top of. Not a smart move. It's crazy. They don't think straight. Drug addicts. They really don't. All they think, you know, they just think about themselves to a certain degree. But you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe that you can overcome this drug addiction. And then my last step, I wouldn't say I don't have 7 steps, I have 6 steps. And then my last step would be go to a higher being like God and ask for help. God is such a powerful method. And I don't really talk a lot about religion, on this, talk show because it's mainly, for talking about different mental illnesses or different mental health problems that occur among men. But, I do kind of believe in God. And I do believe that, he can help you with whatever problems you're going. So you definitely want to believe in some type of spirituality. Like he said, you don't have to believe in specifically God, whatever your religious belief is, believe in that. But believe in something higher than yourself to make sure that you can, overcome this because God is very powerful. He can do whatever you need him to do. He may not do it at that time, but he can do it. So don't forget about that. So I really enjoyed this book for what it was. You know, I thought, I really thought he did a good job of breaking it down and not saying these are the things you need to do, but these are the things that helped him to overcome his addiction. You know, I think he could have easily wrote a memoir detailing his intense battles of alcoholism, but he chose to go the route of making it into a how-to guide of how to overcome an addiction for anybody. And these may not be the best steps for you, but there are steps to overcome addiction. So I don't want you to feel hopeless and like that these are oversimplified. If you read the book, you will get more detail about specifically the 7 steps that he talks about. But just know that there is help out there. If you need the help and you don't think you can do it by yourself, go and talk to someone. Go and talk to a counselor. Go and roll yourself into a rehab, because you have to be able to do this. You have to be able to overcome these demons yourself. No one can help you with that. You have to push through that pain and fight through those, intense withdrawals. You have to do that yourself if you're struggling with that. There's no one method to fix anything. And why the 7 steps may have helped him, they may not help you. So that's why you have to, take things with a solid grain and say, I'm gonna just take variations of his 7 steps, but I'm not gonna, go exactly like how he did over again, because his journey is gonna be different from your journey. And on that, I just want to kind of, thank Derrick Moore for writing this book. Hopefully we can be in touch sometime to get him back on for another episode to talk about alcoholism specifically, because we talked about drug addiction today. But I can easily do another episode about, you know, alcoholism. That's not a problem. But I want to thank him for writing this book and putting the time and effort into it. I know this was probably exhausting to write this book, but he took the steps to, help other people that might can overcome his addiction. So, other than that, I want to thank you guys for joining me today. It's been a really, it's been a pleasure reading this book. I'm gonna put Derrick Moore's links description, who he was and what he's about, where you can find him on his TikTok, and all of that in my YouTube description. But other than that, I want to thank you guys for continuing to support us, to continue to believe in us, to continue to subscribe to us. That's very important. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, Pinterest. You can find us all on those on the YouTube description link. But other than that, I really hope that you got something out of today. And you can actually pick up Derrick Moore's book. It's on Amazon, 7 Steps from Addiction to Sobriety. And other than that, I hope you all have a great and wonderful day. Take care. Bye.